I am here to tell my son's story because most of all, I want him to be remembered. And because I don't ever want another mother to have to go through what I go through on a daily basis. I want to make people aware that fentanyl is a huge issue in our country. When Seth was a baby, he was like any other toddler baby. He was really rambunctious. He was a beautiful child, but of course, I'm supposed to say that. I'm his mom. But I had people come up to me off the street all the time asking me if I would put him in the Gerber commercials because he just had a really pretty face to look at and beautiful eyes. And his dad was a musician, and he took to that. He loved singing and dancing. A lot of singing and dancing went on between the two of them, and even on his own. He had a little cassette recorder. Back then, cassettes were popular, and he had a little cassette recorder and a microphone, and he would play all the little nursery rhymes that you hear, and he would hand the mic off to me sometimes and make me sing with him, but most of the time he wanted it right back so that he could be the star of the show. Everything was a song, from brushing your teeth to going to bed to picking out your toys. If I made a song to it, he would do it. So he was very into music. Even until the day he died, music was a big love of his. Seth was really compassionate, and I am a compassionate person. I see old people on a daily basis, and I love elderly people, and he had that same compassion to him. He was put in St. Joseph's Hospital for a while, and there was a lady there that had lost her son. She watched him get murdered, and she would just go crazy. All of a sudden, they would come give her a shot and put her down, and he didn't like that. So he was so compassionate that he found ways around her having to get her shot. He would either take her and hold her hand and walk with her down the hall, and she would call him Roberto, which she thought he was her son for a few times, and when that became inappropriate and he couldn't walk with her down the hall anymore, he just asked him if he could dance with her. He always wanted to get me to dance. I wish I had danced with him so much more than what I did, but he danced with her. And he danced with her until she calmed down, and she didn't have to get any more shots while he was there to put her down because he didn't like the medication side of things. He thought that there should be other remedies than just handing somebody a pill or giving them a shot, but he had that heart, and he worried about her when he got out of St. Joseph's. He worried how she would do after he left, and so he had a huge heart. He may not have had anything to give anybody, but if he had it, he would have given it. So the St. Joseph's thing was not very long before he passed away, but he always had compassion and always was a really happy kid. And then he was sexually abused by a family member when he was about 4 years old. And his dad and I divorced whenever he was about 2 years old. And his dad became homeless. He was a drug addict, and he felt rejection issues because his dad was not in his life. And then when he was sexually abused, that also affected him very long term. And from there, I started seeing a lot of anger issues, tons of anger issues. He would punch holes in walls. He would, throw ottomans across the room. He had major anger problems, and it stemmed from those things, I think. And that's where I started seeing changes, was after he was sexually abused and into when he started self-medicating at probably 14, 13 years old with marijuana, whatever he could get his hands on pretty much in the small town that we lived in. And he was very disrespectful to me, to teachers, to adults in general, to police officers. The major attitude problems that come with the kid that has anger issues because of rejection or fear or just not feeling like he belonged. The biggest thing that happened to Seth in his life was when he was about 19, he got kicked out of my home. He was kicked out of my home several times because I wouldn't put up. I mean, I was a tough love mother. I was the epitome of tough love. I did everything by the book. And sometimes I wonder why I did all those things. But if I had it to do all over again, I think I would do the same. I would just love him a lot more than I did. I would spend as much time loving him as I did correcting him or disciplining him. But he got kicked out of my house. He had burned all the bridges with all of his friends, so he had nowhere to go. We don't have family that lives in this area. So he literally he slept out of a porta potty, and he was on the streets, and he tried to come back home. And I told him, I told you couldn't come back until you went to rehab or you completed a successful rehab. We had gone through, it's a different story, but he tried to come back home, and I had him arrested in my front yard. And he said he was going to commit suicide, so the police officers stripped him of his clothes and threw him against the wall in the jail cell so hard that it removed all the skin off of his forehead. And so that's part of the reason why he hated police officers. But the only place he had to go was to a best friend's home that he knew back in grade school, and it happened to be a trap house, so they sold drugs out of the house. And some of the boys put pictures of themselves with a assault rifle on social media, and so somebody wanted that assault rifle, and they broke into the home. Unbeknownst to them, my son was there because the car was gone. They thought no one was home, and it was a girlfriend and boyfriend that broke in. And when they did, he took my son in a headlock, and he told the girlfriend to shoot him. And the girl opened fire on my son and emptied the clip into my son. And he lived through that. And the only reason he lived is because of the headlock. He had so many gunshots from here down that he was in ICU during COVID for about a month. And because it was during COVID, I never got to see him. I couldn't even step foot in the hospital. So he had to endure all that. He had to learn to walk again. He had to learn to eat again, use the restroom again, all by himself. He had my support, but only from afar. And that's with doctors saying things like, "What do you like to do for fun, Seth?" I mean, aside from illegal activity. They had a lot of smart aleck comments. He went through a lot because of the manner of which he was shot. They automatically assumed things. Some of it was true, some of it wasn't. But he made it out of that. He lived past that, but he had major digestive issues after that. He lived in chronic pain. Anytime he ate a lot of baby food because he was scared to eat. So he started self-medicating, and he started smoking weed, and that helped with the PTSD. So Seth had night terrors. He woke up every single night with the bed completely sweated down, his clothes completely sweated down. Everything had to be changed every night. And he was honestly tired of living after that. He lost all zeal for life, and he told me more than once that I want to die, but the only reason why I don't want to die is because I know that I'm all you have and you're all I have, and if I die, you'll be crushed. And so I keep on living for you. And he did. He struggled through life. He had been on probation for some stuff that he did in the past, and so COVID opened up and he had to start drug testing again. And I don't know if you know any of this, but weed stays in your system at least 21 days, and pills only stay in your system for 3 days. So he could get clean really quick before he had to give a urinalysis again. And so he was going to a girl's house, and a new girl, somebody he knew from middle school, and I didn't even know he wasn't home because he worked the night shift. And she did not know the signs of someone overdosing or being poisoned, and so she just thought he was drunk. And he took a Xanax and a Perk 30 that night. Or no, a Xanax and an oxycodone, I'm sorry, that night. And he drank with it. And so I got his tox report back, and it said mixed drug toxicity, including fentanyl. And he had over the limit of fentanyl for being able to kill a grown man. But that's how ultimately his life ended, is because he chose to take a pill so that he could sleep at a girl's house and not have a night terror, because that's rather embarrassing, I'm sure. And I'm sure he wanted to be out of his head for a little while. I mean, he was miserable. But the point where he got shot was where he really lost a lot of zeal for life. But he did thrive well as long as he was smoking weed. Not that I condone or not condone weed, but it did help him with his PTSD. And that's how his life ended. I remarried when Seth was about 3 or 4. My husband had 3 sons, and they were all older. And at first, he was all gung ho about it, but he really didn't fit in because they were all older, 2 years apart or so from each other, and he was much younger. So he just kind of got on all their nerves. So Seth never really felt like he fit into the family. And so he started getting friends that didn't have fathers because he said, Mom, they understand me. That's why I hang out with them. Somebody with a good home and a mother and father, they don't understand how I feel not having a father. And so he started hanging out with kids that had issues just like him. And he felt like he fit in with it. And that came with drugs and being disrespectful and disobedient and getting into fights and all that comes with that. I remember once, I laugh about this now, but I didn't then. I called the cops on him because he was completely out of control. And he ran. So I just got in the patrol car and we drove around, because our neighborhood made a loop. We drove around the loop and Seth was hiding behind a bush. And you could see his legs hanging out from behind that tree limb just as clear as day. But because he couldn't see us behind that limb, he thought we couldn't see him. He was probably 11 or 12. And I was like, Seth, come out from behind there. We can see you just clear as day. But apparently he thought if we couldn't see him, then we couldn't see him because he couldn't see us. But little things like that. We put him in rehab, a state-funded rehab, and he got kicked out of that because they left him in a room by himself for about 3 hours, and he got sick of it and turned a table over, and they said that he destroyed public property. So they put him in jail from there in Harris County and wouldn't accept him back. And then we put him in a church rehab, which hindsight's always 20/20, but it was a sham. And they let horses die on their property of starvation, and there was no roof over the bathroom. He did learn a lot about God, which I'm thankful about because he had a really good mentor in there. But the rehab itself did not help him, and so that's the reason I wouldn't let him come back home, is because he didn't finish rehab until I realized why he couldn't finish. He died in Baycliff in the Galveston County Sheriff's Department. He still had a couple pills left in his pocket, and they tested those pills. So when they came to inform me that he was gone and tell me that he was dead, they told me that it was fentanyl at that moment. So I didn't have to wait on a toxicology report to come back. But then I did get his autopsy and his toxicology, and it did confirm that. But they tested the pills that were in his pocket, and they were confirmed fentanyl pills. And one of the reasons they told me is they said when you pick his pants up, make sure you wear gloves if you check the pockets. I mean, we've removed the pills, but if you touch the residue in his pocket and then, you rub your eyes or your mouth or something, you can still transfer fentanyl. And so it can be absorbed that way. And that's how I found out he passed away, is we thought he was in the bed when the cops came. And my husband said, let me just go get him. He's back here. And he said, no, can I just come in? Where's your wife? I just need to come in and talk to you guys. And honestly, I reacted, but I didn't react that much because I didn't, it was very surreal. It was definitely didn't hit me at that moment. I couldn't even cry. It couldn't hit me until later on, whenever you think you see him passing in the hallway, or you think you see him passing in front of a window, or you don't hear his laughter anymore. And there are a lot of people that say that my son made a conscious decision to buy a pill that was illegal, and he did. He made a conscious decision to self-medicate a mental issue that our mental system failed him on, because he took a pill a month before or so, and he tried to hang himself 3 times. He went completely crazy. He fell asleep with his head in the freezer, and I'm pretty sure that pill had fentanyl in it as well, because it wasn't long when he was calling for more pills, apparently. And he had gotten kicked out of that house and came back home to live, and he was drinking himself to death. He had just turned 21 years old on October the 30th, and He died on November the 17th, and he was old enough to buy alcohol, so he went and bought alcohol quite a bit, and he was drinking himself to death. And I called the doctor that he was under because we put him in St. Joseph's. They let him out within a week with pills. I followed up care with another place. All they cared about was giving him pills. And so I called him 3 days before he died, begging for help, begging for them to help me because I felt like Seth was self-destructing. And they said, oh, he has an appointment on Thursday. We'll talk about it then. They did not care. And he died before his appointment on Thursday. And so I truly believe that Seth did take a pill and made a conscious decision to do something he was not supposed to do, but that does not mean his life should have ended. He should be able to get help whenever he needs it. And a lot of our kids, most of our kids, I talked to a lot of other mothers, they all had some sort of mental issue that they needed help with, and they self-medicated because they could not get that help because nobody cared enough. If you don't have money or you don't have insurance that's paying, and sometimes when you do, our mental health system in Texas is not what it should be at all. I have a great support system. I feel like I am a great support system for other mothers. If I didn't go around doing events and educating other kids in other schools and talking to people about my son's story, because in the end, we just want our kids remembered. Normal people don't want to hear about your kid all the time. And that's what you tend to talk about all the time because that's the first thing that's on your mind when you wake up, that you'll never see him again. That's the last thing that's on your mind when you go to bed. But other mothers care. They don't care how much you talk about your son. And so having a huge support system with the group that I created and with the group that we have that go around to schools and do fentanyl events is an important part of my healing process. Do I still have moments and feelings that I wish I didn't have? Absolutely. I mean, my husband had his grandson this past week, and you can't help but be resentful. My husband doesn't deserve that, but I'll never have a grandkid. I have step-grandkids, and I'm really thankful for them, but I'll never have my own. And so you fight with yourself over feelings of resentfulness, and why did you get to keep your kid and I didn't? But, I think it's important to tell that I have a God that helps. And I fell on my face in my garage sobbing one day, and I couldn't get off the floor. My phone had fallen out of my pocket, and I thought if I can just get to my phone and play a Toby Mac song called 21 Years, because he lost his child to fentanyl at 21 years as well. And if the live version of that song goes into a praise song. And I was mad at God, just like every other mother. And I said, if I can just get to that song, I think I can get up off this floor. So I did. I got my phone, I played the song, and I told God, I said, I don't, the end of the song says, lift your hands and praise. And I told God, I don't want to praise you. I am mad at you. You took my son from me. But I need your help, so I'm going to do it. And I've only had God speak to me 3 times where I know without a shadow of a doubt it's God. And he said, I answered your prayer, just not the way you thought I would. And I had prayed for my son. I had prayed and begged God to take the PTSD away, to see him struggling. And as a mother, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't heal your kid. So I had prayed for God to heal him. And at that moment, I was willing to give up my son because he was in a better place and he didn't have the PTSD anymore. And as a mother, you feel like he was my only kid. So you feel like, what is my purpose now? If I'm not a mom anymore, what's my purpose? And I started realizing that my purpose was to be there for other mothers and to be a support system to people and to educate people. And that's what keeps me going. Don't ever think that your child wouldn't do it, because this is not just getting the average mentally handicapped kiddo that tries drugs and does drugs for self-medication, or somebody that's partying all the time, or somebody that has a substance abuse disorder. This is getting kids who a friend that they trust says, hey, you need some Adderall to study all night for a test? I have one. This is getting kids that have never taken a pill in their life and share a half of a pill with a friend. So don't think it can't happen to you. And talk to your kids. I monitored my kid. So monitoring does a lot, yes, but have heart-to-heart talks with your kids, because you don't have a clue how many people had no clue that fentanyl even exists.